another edition of Burgh Watching. Today, we begin the first in a series focusing on the Manchester Bidwell Corporation located on Pittsburgh's North Shore. Founded by Bill Strickland in 1968, the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild is a state-of-the-art, nonprofit educational facility that has been bringing arts education and mentorship to inner-city youth in ceramics, design, digital arts, and photography for more than 40 years. In 1972, Strickland took over the struggling Bidwell Training Center and began integrating new programs into the mix, such as jazz, horticulture, and agriculture technologies, as well as medical and culinary arts. We'll also talk about what is in the future for the Bidwell Training Center and the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild. We're here at the Manchester Bidwell campus to talk with Senior VP and Chief Operating Officer Paulu Nzambi. Welcome to Burgh Watching, Paulu.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So, tell us a little bit about the history of the Bidwell Training Center and the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild.
Well, both organizations, as you indicated, were formed in 1968. Manchester Craftsmen's Guild was really the brainchild of Bill Strickland. It came out of really an experience that he had had with his high school art teacher, a gentleman by the name of Frank Ross. Frank had really introduced him to the art of ceramics and art in general. And through this mentoring relationship, he developed a greater sense of his own personal capacity and what he could contribute to others. Art, in a sense, really brought him to life and enriched his personal experience. When he graduated from college, he wanted the same experience to be made available to kids in his community. So he established the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild in 1968. At that time, it was a ceramics program, and it was in a row home in the community, and over time it developed to what exists now. The Bidwell Training Center has a slightly different story that doesn't originate with Bill. It actually originates with the Manchester community and an organization called the Bidwell Presbyterian Church, the Bidwell Street Presbyterian Church. The community and this church were very much interested in uplifting the situation with African Americans and minorities in the 1960s. The pastor at the time, Jimmy Joe Johnson, wanted to create an organization that would empower people through training so that they could get jobs. The problem was, at that time, it was very difficult for African Americans to get into unions, and therefore it was really difficult for them to get jobs. When Bill took over the organization in 1972, he brought with him these really new ideas, medical tech, high tech. And so in 1985, the organization changed its name to Bidwell Training Center, and since that time forward has basically been a focus on high tech and medical type professions.
Great. So what are the philosophies and goals of the Manchester Bidwell Corporation and its subsidiaries?
Well, I think if we could sort of reduce Manchester Bidwell Corporation into some basic fundamental thoughts, there would probably be three. The first is the idea that people are assets and not liabilities. And truly, it is what happens to them, how we treat human beings once they come into the world, that determines whether they stay on the asset side of the balance sheet or end up on the liability side. So for us at Manchester Bidwell Corporation, what we try and focus on is making sure that people perceive themselves as really being assets, as having something that they can contribute to their communities and their families. That's one of the fundamental philosophies. The second one is this very strong belief that environment really does influence behavior. And when I say environment, I mean both philosophical or cultural environment, as well as the physical or aesthetic environment. In our building, one of the things that you will notice, it's a building filled with light and space and live flowers and art on almost every wall. When you walk in, people greet you, they say hello. Essentially, the building both embodies our sense that if you create a beautiful environment, an enriching environment that speaks to a person's intellect and their soul, and you create a philosophy or a culture of respect and personal dignity, that you can get extraordinary results with people, whether that be in the field of traditional education or career training, or whether it be through educating people through the arts. The final 10, I think, is the spirit that we have of entrepreneurialism. And here it's expressed in our horticultural program where we grow flowers for Giant Eagle and other local grocery store chains and florists, as well as our jazz series. We are pretty fortunate. We have a 350-seat concert hall. We sell tickets. But all of this speaks to the idea that what makes this country really unique is that spirit of entrepreneurialism. And while we are a nonprofit, we believe that it is that spirit that spurs innovation.
You touched on this a little bit earlier, but what adult training and youth art programs are offered at Manchester?
Yeah, specifically in the youth program, we have 4 separate studios. There is the ceramic studio, obviously near and dear to the heart of Bill Strickland because that was his introduction to the world of art. But we've added to that. We now have photography, we have design, and we have the digital arts. In the design studio, they do a lot of different things. There's everything from lightweight sculpture to textiles and fashion design to traditional hand drawing and landscape painting. And then in photography, they focus on really taking great photos, learning how to develop both digital and traditional film processes, but also developing, cutting, matting, and framing the artwork for the students so that they can be available for sale. So there's a broad range of experience available to our youth in the arts program. For adults, we have things that really focus in a couple of areas. There is the culinary arts. We train cooks, essentially. And we have a really nice capacity here because we have 2 cohorts of students that train with us. The first cohort of student is doing the traditional didactic training. They're learning things in the classroom. The second cohort is advanced to the point where they actually cook the food that then the students then eat. In addition to culinary, there's the horticultural program, which is a traditional horticulture program, and people go to work for a number of different vocations as a result of studying horticulture. Anywhere where you might need large landscape maintenance. But also we have the pharmacy program, which is a pharmacy technician program. These are pharmacy techs. You see them behind, the counter helping out the pharmacist. Chemical laboratory technician, chem-techs as we call them. They're not chemists, but they do have an applied associate's degree, in an occupational associate's degree that allows them to work in almost any chemical lab that we have in the area. Finally, there is medical billing and medical coding and something we call it IRMA. It's actually an acronym, E-R-M-A. It stands for Electronic Records Medical Assistance. And what that does is it combines the training that you would traditionally get as a medical assistant with the training that you receive to be able to handle the transition that now is being government mandated from traditional paper records to electronic records.
So who benefits from Manchester Bidwell Corporation?
Well, if I could describe the populations, there would be 2 relatively distinct populations. Certainly with the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild, which is the youth program, by and large, it's going to be youth. We draw a substantial number of youths from the Pittsburgh public schools, but we also have a small component that come from other school systems, whether they be charter or homeschool or cyber school. As to adults, we have a pretty broad range of adults, but really it's individuals who are either unemployed, underemployed, or a dislocated worker. So we have everybody from an individual who has traditionally never worked and perhaps been on public assistance and now is looking for a way to really improve and change their lives, to someone who has worked their whole lives but unfortunately may have worked a job with no possibility for advancement. They weren't offered health care benefits. They weren't necessarily being paid a livable or sustainable wage. And in order to really effectively take advantage of opportunities, they need a little bit more training, something beyond high school, but not quite a university or 2-year degree. The final population of people who really benefit from our programs are dislocated workers. And those are individuals, frankly, who have, usually a pretty exceptional work history. They've worked most of their lives, but their companies have either gone under or their jobs have been outsourced. Whatever the situation, they find themselves in a position where they're no longer capable of performing the job that they used to perform. They're in a new employment environment, they need training, but they need to get back to work quickly. And that's what our program really allows them to do.
So how important is the Manchester Bidwell Corporation as a whole to the city of Pittsburgh?
Well, I think it's important on many different levels. On a personal level, I think with the 300 plus youths that come here every day, it's critically important. They look forward to coming here every day after school. If it wasn't here, I'm not sure what they would be doing. But it's critically important for them because fundamentally it provides, one, a safe and nurturing environment where they can develop real skills that, enrich them as individuals, allow them to become aware of certain capacities or abilities that they may not have known that they possessed, and an opportunity to do something that we think is really, really important, and that is to celebrate the accomplishments of young people. We hear a great deal about the failings of young people and how things haven't gone well for them. This is really an opportunity for them to show off their stuff, to show their art in a very visual and dramatic way that can be appreciated not only by them and their peers, but by parents and teachers and others. So that's a real value to them. To adults, I think, and for the region, it's really important to have a place like Bidwell Training Center because where else can you really get the type of training that we offer in such a short period of time that gives people the hope that they need, that their lives can be transformed. From a larger perspective, because we have this exceptional building and it's filled with art and it really is a unique architectural feature, we have become somewhat of a regional asset.
Talk to me a little bit more about the impact that you've seen Manchester Bidwell Corporation have on the lives of its students.
Well, the impact, I think, is transgenerational at this point. I mean, we've been in existence in some form or another since 1968. So there are literally generations of people whose mothers and aunts and sons and daughters have either come through our youth program or come through our adult program and are working jobs. What's really sort of enriching about the impact that we have is, when you train a kid or train a young person using the arts, you're essentially unlocking their creative imagination. And what the outflow of that isn't necessarily a direct route to, an artistic life or a life in the arts. We find that a significant number of our graduates have gone on to become doctors and lawyers and engineers, and you find them in all these different venues in life. And when you ask them, what was the impact of the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild, you'd be amazed at how they can tie their present vocation to something that occurred or some aspect or way of looking at the world that derives directly from art. So when you look at the collective impact of young people and the collective impact on adults who are now employed, the impact is pretty significant in an economic sense. And in a human sense, it's really significant because I think this place has come to a point where it really symbolizes hope for a lot of people. So much so that what it has done for one gives them the ability to direct others to this place because they believe, if I was able to have this experience here myself, I want to direct somebody else here so they can experience the same thing.
So Paulu, what makes the programs here so successful?
I think it's a combination of things. I think it really comes down to the way we treat people. We live in a world where, when you're disadvantaged, when your life isn't going the way you want it to go, there are very few places that you can go where there are people willing to give you a chance, especially if it has been your experience that you have made mistakes in your past, and it's very hard for people to let go of those mistakes. It's very hard for people who have always done well in life and find themselves in a unfortunate position to find a way to get back, literally, sort of like back on the horse. I think we make that available to people. When we say that we value or we see people as assets, I think it starts with literally when you walk in the door and somebody says hello to you. And it extends all the way through to your academic experience here, where you're working with teachers who really want you to succeed. And I think that sense that people are really pulling for you, that people want you to succeed, is palpable in this place.
So what's in the future for the Manchester Bidwell Corporation?
Well, hopefully more of the same and maybe some expansion. We have great programs that already exist. One of the things that keeps us sort of vibrant and relevant is our ability to change with the economic environment. Our career training programs have been developed in conjunction with the demands of industry. So when we develop a training program, it's because industry has said to us, we are going to have a demand for this particular type of skill set in an employee. Would you help us train these folks for work? We've done our research, we've done our due diligence, we've looked at the Department of Labor reports, and they say for the next 25 years there's going to be an increase. And so we do training that meets the demands of industry. So we are constantly in need of evolution. So as new technologies become available, as new industry comes to this area, we want the ability to continually update our programs, phase out programs that are no longer applicable. Steel came and went, so there was a need for something else. We met that need. At some point in the future, some of these jobs that we're training for right now will go by the wayside. We want to be ready to continue with something new.
So what can our viewers do to get involved?
Well, there's a number of things you can do. I mean, with any nonprofit, one of our biggest things is financial support. And we are pretty fortunate now. We have something called sustained giving, which makes the ability of people to support this organization relatively manageable. You can make a commitment, a small commitment over time, and essentially it just comes off your credit or debit card, and we'll continue to do it for as long as you want us to do it. But there are also opportunities here for volunteers. We have youth programs that run throughout the year and during the summer, and we're always looking for people who are passionate about the arts, who love children, to volunteer in our programs. So volunteering of your time, supporting us with your dollars, definitely things that you can do. And also participating in our programs. We are extraordinarily lucky here to have one of the greatest jazz series that you will ever find. From September until May, we have some of the finest performers in the world from jazz come and grace our stage. And I can say that really with fear of contradiction, because I've sat in the concert hall and listened to, Ahmad Jamal and Paquito de Rivera and some of these, world-renowned musicians. Come and take in a show, come and be a part of this culture, this way of thinking and feeling that really is accessible and available to everyone. So come on down, take a tour of the place. We offer tours routinely. So if you're ever wondering what we're literally describing and you want to set eyes on the real thing, seeing is believing. Come down, take a tour, walk through our greenhouse, walk through our main building, see our concert hall, certainly, and tell others.
So one of the questions we always ask our guests here on Burgh Watching is, why Pittsburgh? So why Pittsburgh for you personally, and why Pittsburgh for the Manchester Bidwell Corporation?
Well, Pittsburgh has been extraordinarily good to me. I mean, I came here to do education, and once I completed that education, Pittsburgh was nice enough to offer me a job, so I stayed. One of the great things about Pittsburgh is there are a lot of opportunities. It's one of the most livable cities, so from an economic standpoint, why not Pittsburgh? You're here. It's very livable. There's a great arts and cultural community. I mean, the cultural district is always vibrant. You have great winning sports teams, which many other cities, they may boast sports teams, but not necessarily winning sports teams. So there's definitely that. There's something here for everyone, I think, in Pittsburgh. And for me, it's also the place where, I met my wife. So it has been an extraordinarily blessing for me to be in Pittsburgh. And then having the opportunity to work in a place like Manchester Bidwell Corporation really is sort of the icing on the cake. It's rare that you get to work for an organization where every day when you show up, you're doing good work for people. That what you're doing is incredibly meaningful, not only for you personally, but for the people who come in and study here and go on to have better lives because this place exists.
Paulo, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a huge pleasure having you on the show.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us for another episode of Burgh Watching. Be sure to stay up to date on all things Burgh by visiting the Burgh Living blog at www.burghliving.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, www.facebook.com/burghliving, and of course on Twitter under our username @burghliving. Join us again for the next edition of Burgh Watching when we explore some of the wonderful departments at Manchester Bidwell's facility on Pittsburgh's North Shore. We'll see you next time.